Okay, so building on from yesterday's lesson, this is the last wee one in the topic, and that's us good to go for this onto our exam questions. So far all the inequations that we've solved, there's been no tricks, nothing to try and trip you up in it. Okay, today we're going to introduce the one instance that's going to change something. Okay, and the wee rule here is sitting on its own. It says if you divide by a negative, it means you must flip the sign. Okay, now what I mean by that is if it's a less than or a less than or equal to, it's going to turn into a greater than or greater than equal to, and vice versa. Okay, so we're going to flip the direction that the sign is facing. Now let's jump into a wee example. We're not doing any dividing yet, so everything's staying exactly as it is. That's staying as a less than symbol. And my left hand side, I'm doing nothing to that right now, so I'm just leaving that alone. But what I'm going to do to the right hand side is I'm going to break these brackets, just the exact same as we have been doing so far this week. Oh, that should have been a 2x plus 6 there. I've multiplied everything out there. Now what I'm going to do the exact same as before is I'm going to bring all my letters over to the left hand side. So that's where it belongs. We're bringing that 2x over and it's becoming a minus 2x. We're going to have the numbers on the right hand side, so that number's where it belongs, and that number's going to come over and become a take away 9 because it was adds, so it's going to become take away. Now let's keep that inequality symbol. 3x minus 2x is just x, and 6 take away 9 is negative 3. So that's my final answer there. As you can see, I didn't end up with any negative numbers here on this left hand side, so everything's being treated as normal. Now for example number 2, it's a slightly different story at the very end, so we're just going to work our way through it and see what we end up with. As you can see, the left hand side, which is 2x minus 6, there's no brackets in that, so I'm just going to leave that alone. And then I'm going to break the brackets in the right hand side here. So that's going to be 4x add 40. I've multiplied that out. So my inequality symbol is staying the same. I've not flipped it. I'll explain to you when and why I'm flipping it in a wee second. Okay, so right now it's staying pointing the same direction. The same as before. I'm bringing that over and making it negative because it was positive there. And I'm bringing that over and making it positive because it was negative there. So I'm bringing the letters to the left and the numbers to the right. So 2x take away 4x, that leaves me with a negative 2x, and 40 add 6 gives me 46. Now if you look really closely here, we've now got a negative 2, okay? So what we are going to do in the next line is I'm going to divide by that negative 2, okay? That's what I'm going to have to do for that next line of working. So because I'm dividing by a negative number, that's when I flip the direction that the symbol's facing. So rather than it being greater than or equal to, it's now going to be less than or equal to. So I'm just left with an x on its own. And on the right hand side I'm going to have 46 divided by negative 2. And now all that's left to do is actually simplify that. So half of 46 is 23, and you've got your negative symbol there with you as well. Okay, so a recap, I was dividing by a negative 2, doesn't matter what it says on this side, it's if I'm dividing by a negative number. Okay, so if you get a negative coefficient of x, that's when you flip the symbol. Alright, let's have a wee look at this last example. Let me extend that down a wee bit. Okay, as you can see, we've got lots and lots of brackets here. Okay, so let's get rid of them first of all. Now I'm going to use the quick method to multiply out this left hand side because that's a bracket all squared. So I'm going to square the start, double the middle, and square the ends. If you're using, let me make that line up, if you're using the long way or the normal way, I'll go over and do that at the side. Remember, a bracket squared means it's multiplied by itself. And then you would go ahead and use FOIL to break those brackets and multiply it out, and then when you tidy it up, +1. and that is matching what I've done there. So you can use either method, it doesn't matter, whatever you fancy. But for this side here, okay, I'm going to have to use foil because that's not a squared bracket. Okay, it's two separate brackets, so I'm just going to have to go ahead and use foil. Okay, so my firsts, okay, your teacher might call it something different, you might have a different technique, but we use foil, or eyebrows and chins, some teachers say rainbows and smiles. Whatever technique you've been taught to break double brackets, you just use it here. So sorry, back to this question. X times x gives me x squared, x times 2 gives me 2x, 3 times x gives me 3x, and 3 times 2 gives me 6. Okay. Right, let's get all my letters over on the left hand side and all my numbers over on the right hand side. In fact, I'll rub that out to make sure I've left myself enough space. Right, so that's a letter, that's allowed to stay there. That's a letter, that's allowed to stay there. There's my +1. That's going to get moved over in a wee second. Okay. And then here, I've got an x squared. That's a letter, so I want to bring that over to the left hand side. And that's a letter, so I want to bring that over. That's a letter, so I want to bring that over. So everything that's highlighted blue is getting moved. And I'm going to have to do the same. I'm going to have to rub that out, not give myself anywhere near enough room there. Right, so that's coming over and becoming negative. That's coming over and becoming negative. And that's coming over and becoming negative. That 6 was left alone. And that +1 is coming over to become negative. Now it's still looking quite complicated, but don't worry, it's going to tidy up nicely. So if you look closely, you will see x squared take away x squared, they just give me 0. 2x take away 2x gives me 0. And then I'm just left with a negative 3x here. 6 take away 1 is 5. And now you will see that I have a negative 3 there. Okay, was the last one a negative 3 as well? No, it wasn't, it was a negative 2. Right, so we've got a negative 3 there. And that negative 3 is multiplying the x. So what I'm going to have to do in my next line of working is I'm going to have to divide by, oh sorry I've written that wrong, I'm going to have to divide by negative 3. Okay, so that's when this special rule's kicking in. I'm changing the direction of the symbol. 5 over negative 3, that doesn't simplify, so let's just leave it like that.